There is an old saying which goes something like, "No man can ever stand in the same river twice, for it is not the same river, and he is not the same man." This old wisdom would suggest that we as humans are in a constant state of evolution. Just as a river must flow with new water, so must we grow with new thought. Madam Toastmaster, fellow rivers, and I guess there's no guests tonight. I ask you, how have you changed? In reflecting, I'd like to share a personal story of mine. Growing up, my mom always told me I was the best thing since sliced bread. After all, I do have a Salvadorian mama. Any Salvadorians in the house? Any women who ever dated Salvadorian men? Well, you might qualify for both, maybe not. But as Rosie knows, us Salvadorian men can do no wrong. Mi príncipe, mi chulo, tan bello. ¿Tienes hambre? So you would assume growing up that I would have a really high self-esteem. Unfortunately, not everybody always saw me the way my mother did. In particular, I always felt different from the other kids at school. I had this gut sinking feeling that all the teachers just saw me as another brown kid from the barrio. No matter how different or smart I tried to be, I felt like a statistic. In elementary school, I remember my questions being ignored and pushed to the side. In middle school, I was designated as regular, not honors or advanced, just regular. I remember starting to feel about myself the way they felt about me, regular. In high school, it was more of the same. I remember getting straight C's my first semester of high school, my English teacher at the time actually telling my parents that I needed special tutoring. But that wasn't the problem. The real problem was I just didn't believe I was smart or special. Fast forward to the 10th grade. This is the year everything changed for me. I was placed into Mr. Medina's English class. Now, Mr. Medina, he was the cool teacher. We all had him. The teacher that would cuss during his lectures and had band posters all over the wall. It was that year that I also met Jeremy, a new kid from out of town who inspired me to love reading. He was sort of like this dark, ominous punk guy that used to wear Dead Kennedys t-shirts, and he was into esoteric knowledge. He shoved the books Damien by Herman Hesse and Jack Kerouac in my face, and he said, "You gotta read these." So I gave it a shot. I began reading those books and I couldn't stop. I devoured them. So when it was time to do a free write in Mr. Medina's English class, I was ready. I began to channel the voices of Kerouac, Hesse. They flowed through me like that river I described earlier. By the time I was done, I had created the river, the mountains, the sky, and the trees that surrounded it. I was finally good at something. By mimicking the voices of these great writers, I was able to find my own voice. Later that week, I was talking to one of Mr. Medina's TAs, and she said, "You know, I was grading papers with Medina and your paper came up." "How did I do?" I asked, curiously. "I don't remember," she said, "but Mr. Medina, he says you have talent." He said, "What?" I said. I was floored because as much as I tried to downplay this moment, it changed me. Nobody had ever told me I had talent. I actually felt smart for once. I felt special all of a sudden. I was emboldened by this newfound talent, and I began to excel in all my other classes. I even decided to join the school newspaper, where I eventually became the editor-in-chief. I was so obsessed with reading and with writing that as a senior, I was awarded the school's English Senior Standout Award. I remember just before my advanced placement literature test, Mr. Medina came up to us in the hallway where me and some of the other kids were hanging out and gave us a few words of encouragement, but he asked me to hang back as everybody went inside. It was just me and him out in the hallway as the other kids piled nervously into the room. He looked at me with those big brown doughy eyes through those bifocals of his with a smirk on his face, and he said, "Hey Carlos, shoot for a 5. I got a 5 on that test. I don't know if it was because of him or because of me, but I know one thing. He believed in me. I went on and got accepted to my dream school, UCLA, where I majored in guess what? English. I can't help but think this was all set in motion by a few kind words from a humble English teacher. Fellow Toastmasters and friends, I implore you, analyze your beliefs for anything that may be holding you back. Why do you think that way in the first place? And more importantly, how can you change it to make room for your destiny? If only a few kind words altered my destiny, what could they do for you? Oh, and in case you haven't heard in a while, you are special, you are talented beyond belief, and you can do anything you put your heart into. Madame Toastmaster?